The ACE study, it stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. This was uncovered by accident in the late 80s when, interestingly enough, it was an American insurance company, the Kaiser Permanente in SoCal, in Southern California. It was La Jolla. They were doing an intervention with, I believe it was obese patients in their health initiative. And they're like, let's help them get healthier, right? And again, this whole idea of make America healthy again, this has been a thing for a long
Yeah.
time. This isn't
Yeah.
new.
Yeah.
And so the doctor, his name is Vincent Felitti, he's still alive, him and his team, huge intervention, exercise, diet, nutrition, counseling, support, all the things. It was really good. People lost a lot of weight, like hundreds of pounds. And they were tracking them, and then they noticed that these people disappeared. And I'm really shortening the essence of this story. They disappeared. They're like, what happened? Where did everybody go? And so they did a follow-up. Long story short, turns out that a lot of these people, if not all of them, when they studied and interviewed and surveyed them, had had some form of adversity growing up. Abuse, parent that was addicted, a parent that was sick, a parent that was incarcerated, divorce, emotional abuse, living in poverty. There's sort of a 10-point questionnaire that you can go online and get your ACE score. And so what they started to see, and they had thousands, like it was tens of thousands of data points. And they showed that with every ACE, with every adversity growing up, or in infancy, childhood, your likelihood of having a chronic disease went up almost exponentially. It was like 2/3, I think, of this population showed signs of adversity, and then, of course, being chronically ill later in life. So that kind of brought this connection with early adversity, early stress, dysregulation, and chronic illness later in life. And this isn't just like fibromyalgia and autoimmune. The list was long. It was certain cancers, certain heart disease problems, addictions, IV drug use, things that you wouldn't think are connected, osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis. And some of the critique around the ACE study, because I've seen it, is, oh, but they don't talk about birth trauma, and they don't talk about surgical trauma, and they don't talk about transgenerational or in utero trauma. Like, I get it, you guys. It's one study. They had to start somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we know these little people growing up in that kind of adversity are living in a state of fight, flight, freeze. And if it persists, you go into this high tone dorsal shutdown collapse. And that is what breeds these chronic illnesses, these metabolic dysfunctions. You add in a shitty food supply and access to really bad addictive types of food, and you have a recipe for disaster. And that's, I think, what we're seeing, because when you have adversity, let's just take someone who literally had abuse, poor household, no attunement with, say, mother or father, you are not building what's called a healthy social engagement system. It's part of our parasympathetic nervous system, and you're not building a healthy ability to self-soothe.
Yeah.
And you need that self-soothing, which is at the autonomic nervous system level. This isn't thought-based. This is not emotional intelligence. You don't build those wires. They have to be myelinated in the first 3 years of life. So this is like real neuroscience happening. And if you don't get those wires built, you don't know how to self-soothe. So what do? You go to the food, you go to the drugs, you go to the adrenaline sports, you go to being a perfect student, right? To have control.
Yeah.
And so there is a very strong correlation, connection. I'm going to just say, to me, it's factual, because I've worked with enough people with addiction, and they're like, yeah, this has nothing to do with genetics. This has to do with what we might call epigenetics. Mm-hmm. And how I was taught from a young age to take care of myself. And for most people, they weren't taught.
Yeah.
They were just left to their own devices to figure out how to move through life. They were not resilient. They were adapted. They adapted to the circumstance. And what that adaptation offered was this false sense of, we would call window of tolerance, this false sense of resiliency. But sooner or later, Joe, the system breaks down, and that's where we get the chronic illness.
Yeah.
Because it's like the fire is still burning. We're trying to put out the fire. on the roof, but the fire is happening in the furnace at the basement. It's like we got to get to that root cause, not the little bits of smoke that are coming out from the windows, for example.